aggressor.
Hello and welcome to another episode of A Sip of Cinema, only on SCTV. This week we're looking at Starship Troopers from 1997. Welcome to my regular co-host. There wouldn't be a show without him.
I think this is our youngest movie so far that we've done.
Yeah, it's definitely easily the latest movie. It's sort of I feel like I'm breaking my own rules because I think I told you that 95 is the latest that we were going to go, but I suppose we'll make an exception for Starship Troopers.
I think, for me, this is fine because I'm still in high school when this came out. I feel like anything before high school is things that could have influenced us in some way, or movies that influenced us.
Yeah, technically you're correct because I was 18, 19 when this came out. So, not exactly the same age as when I was watching Predator, but it's sort of still the same theme thematically, still consistent with the rest of the shows that we're doing. So, yeah, Starship Troopers. So, first of all, I didn't forget this time. We'll talk about what we're drinking and then propose a toast to Starship Troopers. I haven't pulled this one out in a while.
Ooh, the Ardbeg.
Ardbeg 5. It's not for the faint of heart.
Extra smoke.
Exactly. Super smoky. Very, very smoky. If you're familiar with Isla Scotch whiskey. It's not for everybody, but we like it. I introduced you to Ardbeg 10, and you fell in love with it immediately, to my
Yeah, that was
surprise.
automatically was my favorite whiskey at the time.
Yeah, and even more surprisingly, our father also really loved the smoky Scotch whiskey. So I don't know what it's. I guess it runs in the family. Like it's something that we didn't realize we liked, but really like a lot. So there we go.
We like burnt stuff.
Exactly. So what are you sipping on?
I got some James Squire Lager Shackles.
Oh yeah, yeah, I like that one. Nice and light, uh, relatively speaking. Not as light as Corona, of course, but for a decent beer, you know, it's not. It's pretty easy drinking. Not like a pussy Corona or light beer or a Bud Light.
No, I'm not a big fan of the mainstream lagers. Like this James Squire lagers, it's got a little bit of it's a little bit more premium in a way. It's
Mm.
got some nicer flavor, depths of flavor, and some body to it, which is nice. Not just
Yeah,
not just piss water, really.
it's properly made. Yeah, exactly. All right, so I'm looking forward to taking my first sip of Ardbeg 5. So let's propose a toast to Starship Troopers. It gave us another perspective on the science fiction genre during the 90s. Paul Verhoeven um, specialized in sort of this lampooning, certain cultural phenomena within American culture through movies like Total Recall and RoboCop. But we didn't really know it at the time. For us, Starship Troopers was just another cool sci-fi action flick with, big monsters and blasting guns. So, but we'll talk about the deeper meanings behind what Verhoeven was trying to get at. So, here's to Starship Troopers.
Cheers.
Hmm. Oh, that'll put some hair on your chest. It's been a while since you had the Ardbeg 5, right?
It has been a very long time. I think
Hmm.
I think I've had Lagavulin with you. That was my last smoky flavor, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's still a lot left. Like it's up to here, so there's still a lot left relative to the other.
Well, there's
Scotch.
some birthdays coming up, so it might get
Yeah,
less.
that's because we always dig into like the Lagavulin 16, Port Charlotte, Ardbeg. Um, like they're super expensive now, so we probably should drink other things. Sometimes, but we don't drink that much, so we're actually it's lasting
No,
quite a bit. So,
no, that's right.
all right. So I didn't forget. You thought I forgot that we're going to talk about what it meant to us back in the day. So so for me, Starship Troopers, like I said before, was just another sci-fi action film. There wasn't really any other deeper meaning I attributed to it. Um, maybe there's a pop cultural um, aspect of Denise Richards in the movie because she was a big deal at the time. But sort of the main characters weren't really. Well, Johnny Rico at least wasn't really well known as an actor. We knew about Michael Ironside and Ace, right? Wasn't Ace in Back to
Yeah,
the Future?
was he Back to the Future Ace?
Was he? He looks recognizable, right?
No, I feel like, well, he's recognizable. I thought it was because he's Gary Busey's son,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's probably more. Yeah,
because
like he's
they
just.
do share
Mm,
some features, physical features.
yeah, Jake Busey.
Yeah,
Oh, it's Jake. Yeah, Busey's son. Yeah, but he sort of has that sort of similar face and facial expression. Um, but overall, like the actors weren't really that well known at the time, aside from Michael Ironside and Denise Richards. I mean, Denise Richards only because of like MTV and stuff like that. I don't know if she was with Charlie Sheen back then, like when they started.
No, not yet. I don't think.
No, I don't think she was with Sheen in the 90s. I think that was like the
This
2000s.
is yeah. I remember because I was 15, 16. I was like year 11, and Denise Richards was like I guess she's like a Charlize Theron or
Mm,
Demi Moore, or she was like this really hot young girl for like high schoolers especially,
mm,
and like she was like a good girl in this movie, but like the next year Wild Things came out, and
yeah,
like all the fellas is like, you seen Denise Richards? Like she's really hot.
yeah, yeah. That
She was
you had different
the knockout
actresses.
of that decade, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's why she was sort of with a lot of different celebrity guys like Charlie Sheen. Eventually, I don't know if they married. She married Charlie Sheen, but
I think they married, they had some kids, and then yeah, then it just went down the drain. It's
wait, was she
Hollywood.
with Dennis Rodman?
Rodman, no, that's Carmen Electra.
Oh, that's Electra. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Wait, I was thinking. Okay. All right. Yeah. No, it's Carmen Electra. Yeah. But anyway, that's enough. Sure. Hollywood gossip. Um, so Starship Troopers released in '97. Um, so the late '90s. I don't want to go on a tangent, but the late '90s is one of the greatest eras in cinema history. Um, but Starship Troopers. I don't know if it's regarded, within that pantheon of films, but I think for us, it's sort of a film that we'll always remember. Like it's not a film that we just watched and then forgot.
I feel like it was more for people. The people who enjoyed it was mostly our age group, I feel,
Yeah.
or people that's into that kind of genre, because it didn't get like the highest reviews and things like that. I think after, like years later, it became sort
Mm,
of like a cult classic
yeah.
after its initial release, even though we loved it like straight away.
But movies like this always, I think, sometimes like always get like misinterpreted. Like you could misinterpret Verhoeven as promoting the military-industrial complex or promoting war or glorifying war, when in fact it's the complete opposite. Like he's satirizing all these elements of um, like propaganda and the military-industrial complex, and you know, war-focused politicians and things like that, and governments. Um, so, like I said, directed by Paul Verhoeven, who directed two of our favorite movies of all time, RoboCop and Total Recall. Um, and he also directed, um, shall we say, interesting films like Basic Instinct and Showgirls, two very different films to the ones I just mentioned. So Showgirls particularly notorious for being really, really bad. Although that reputation could again be a misinterpretation of Verhoeven's intentions, although I haven't seen that movie. Um, but Basic Instincts is more like this modern day noir thriller, um, rather than the obvious satire of RoboCop or Starship Troopers. So it's written by Ed Neumeyer and based on the novel by Robert Heinlein. So it actually was based on a novel. Um, so starring Casper Van Dien. So I guess the trivia question of the day is, what other movies was Casper Van Dien starring in, aside from Starship Troopers? Because I think you'd have to look up IMDb for that
What was
information.
that? I think there's that Johnny Depp movie, I think,
Hmm?
came out a few years afterwards. Um, Sleepy Hollow.
Rum
Yeah,
Diaries?
Sleepy
Oh,
Hollow. But
Sleepy Hollow.
he wasn't main character there.
Oh,
He got a
oh yeah, it
special.
wasn't Sleepy Hollow. Damn. That's good trivia by you. So it looks like he's had
What
a pretty
other
consistent career in Hollywood.
what other movies does he have?
So I'm just looking on the list. Wait, let me pull up the list because we have that technology right now. So you can see he's wait, what? 68. That doesn't make any sense. Maybe it could. I don't know. So there's a lot of TV shows initially, and then um, where's yeah, Starship Troopers right here. Tarzan of the Lost City. Oh, so I don't know if you've heard of any like Sleepy Hollow, but I haven't really heard of any of these movies.
Hmm.
Lots of TV movies, TV movie, TV movie, TV movie, TV movie. Oh, the video game in 2005. Starship Troopers 3.
I
Oh,
never. I think I only watched the second one, and it was like really low budget.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's one of those franchises that could have really made a trilogy or something if it was. I think if it was continued by the original minds behind it, but yeah,
Easily.
it's it's a bit
Easily.
disappointing to think of it that way.
Like this movie doesn't even end at an ending. It just ends at some point in the story of, Rico's Roughnecks. There's so many other stories they could tell based on Rico's military career and his relationships with the other people, that he knows, that he went to school with, and almost infinite stories. They can have a TV show probably, on the level of Game of Thrones or something. But yeah, it's kind of surprising they didn't take advantage of that IP when they had the chance. But it's probably a different time in Hollywood. So yeah, starring Casper Van Dien, Denise Richards, Dina Meyer as Dizzy, I believe her name is. Jake Busey, NPH, Neil Patrick Harris. Everyone knows him. Michael
Doogie
Ironside,
Doogie
Doogie
Howser,
Howser, yeah.
MD.
Uh, Michael Ironside, you know,
No, we love
everyone's
Michael Ironside.
everyone's favorite like
He's
character
like
actor from the
first
80s,
time he was a good
80s and
guy,
90s. Yeah,
but
I'm good
he was a
guy.
badass good guy.
Like there's like the term "good guy" is sort of very loose in this film, um, based on like just assessing people's behavior, especially in the military. But anyway, and also Clancy Brown, he's also in it as what's his name, Zip or something.
Zim,
Zim, yeah, yeah, he's a really good actor. He plays a really good bad guy.
he's from Shawshank.
Yeah,
Shawshank Redemption is one of the warden. Yeah, warden. No, not the wardens. The security,
oh, one of the guards. Yeah,
the guards.
yeah. Yeah, another really good character actor as well. So yeah, not the most famous actors, of course, but very effective, very good actors overall. Um,
And they
but
had
the thing about
Hal. Is it Hal from the captain guy that's always talking with Zim at the
oh
what's his name?
the yeah wait
And he always seems to play these kind of bit roles as well.
Yeah. Dean Norris.
Yeah, I think that's him.
The guy from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, Breaking Bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah. He sort of looks exactly the same as he did in Breaking Bad, which is kind of strange because it's like 15 years later and he still looks the same, basically. Um, yeah, I didn't know Rue McClanahan was in this movie as a biology teacher.
Oh yeah.
Rue from Golden Girls. Anyway, that's probably the longest intro of all time of any show so far. Let's get started. Um, so it starts off with military march type of music in the background, and then it starts off with propaganda, the propaganda news network called the Federal News Network broadcast. So throughout the film, we get these broadcasts from the Fed News Network as propaganda for the citizens, so they support the war against the bugs, basically, and to propagandize the people to join the army to fight the bugs for their safety and freedom. And so Verhoeven likely deliberately called it the Fed News Network because you see on the screen it says Fed News Network. Feds, the FBI, narcs, not to be trusted. So that's obviously deliberate. And so they're sort of propagandizing the citizens, including children, to join the army. There's a really strong focus on getting the kids riled up and focused on joining the military as well. And one of the key features of this society is that service in the military guarantees citizenship. And so we get a really good conversation between um, Razak Ironside's character and his class about what that actually means, which is a good idea for Verhoeven
Rat
to
check.
really flesh it out, to really explain what citizenship guarantees. I mean, what service guarantees citizenship actually means. And so one of the problems with the bugs is that they send meteors to Earth and like it destroys parts of Earth, like it destroys Buenos Aires later on in the film. And they're saying that there's an unlimited number of meteorites that come from these bugs, and so they need to destroy the planet Clandathu. And then we cut to this live feed of a battle on Clandathu, and soldiers are getting shot, not shot, but they're getting attacked by these bugs, and they're shooting the bugs, and it's like a huge war zone. And the guy even gets chopped in half during the news broadcast. And one of the things about this movie is that it's very brutal. It's a lot more brutal and violent than I remembered it being. What was your impression of the violence in this movie?
I think that's one of the things that attracted me to the movie was the violence. It's yeah, it's very brutal and gory, and it doesn't try to shy away from it at all. Everyone, like, there's headshots, there's limbs getting taken off, and yeah, they don't hold back.
Yeah, decapitations, people getting chopped in half, stabbed in the head, stabbed in almost every part of the body. And then we cut to a year earlier. And then we get this really cringy class scene where they're just a bunch of dorky kids, and they're doing this lame, like Rico's drawing this lame picture of her and of him and Denise Richards on his iPad or whatever. It's really cringe. I think deliberately so. Like, if you think this is bad, like that's the point. Like,
This is the people that want to join the army, or this is
yeah,
who's who's going to be enlisted like in the next few months.
Yeah, they're
This is
just a bunch of dumb
where they
kids.
come from.
Yeah, they're just a bunch of dumb kids who are focused on love and lame stuff like that. And like, there's no concept of war or like pain or death at this stage of the movie. Razak makes a point in the class that only citizens vote because you're exercising political violence. And that's a type of force that you can impose on your enemy. And he's saying that force resolves more issues than any other solution. So, right off the bat, you get the impression that they're under some sort of military regime, whether it's a military dictatorship, could be argued in some way, but it's primarily sort of run through this idea of patriotism and duty to your country, even if you have to defend your country with your life. And then he sort of asks Rico about this.
It's a reward. What the Federation gives you for doing federal service.
No. Something given has no value. What's the moral difference, if any, between a civilian and a citizen?
A citizen accepts personal responsibility for the safety of the body politic, defending it with his life. A civilian does not.
The exact words of the text.
Yeah, so immediately you get this othering, this sort of separation, this class separation within society between those who would lay down their life for the other citizens and those who, who would not. And so that's deemed to be selfish. And so you don't get to vote on things if you don't contribute in some way, in that extreme way. So obviously we wouldn't agree with that sentiment. Like this, you shouldn't have to put your life on the line for some politician's idea of war in order to vote. That sort of doesn't make any sense. So, but if you rile people up with that sort of propaganda, then that becomes the norm. That type of thinking becomes the norm, as it is in this society, because no one really questions anything that's going on. Everyone sort of is really fired up about participating in the war.
I gotta make this comment that, like, looking at the actors in that scene, it looks like they're like the oldest looking high school students ever. They look pretty aged.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, they're not authentic high school kids, are they? But, yeah, that's a good point actually, because they're probably late 20s, if not 30s, when it was filmed. So even Neil Patrick Harris is sort of a baby face. He didn't look that young.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's but yeah, like the whole film is sort of shot like a soap opera. Like if you watch this movie, like the way, like the cinematography and stuff, it sort of looks like a soap opera. It doesn't look like Star Wars or like some other spacefaring science fiction movie. It doesn't look like any other movie. It sort of looks way too clean.
Yeah, there's some scenes where it's like purposefully bad acting, or it's supposed to be like forced acting, I guess. Like it's not like genuine.
Yeah, which sort of speaks to the satire that Verhoeven is trying to capture.
Yeah, like the whole movie is like a big fascist propagandic advertisement for the Federation, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so
even
if you
with
don't understand
all the death and dying and stuff, they still glorify it and still make, I guess, still make people feel like they still want to join regardless.
Yeah, and they make heroes out of the fallen or make heroes out of certain people in order to cover up the reality of what happened to them on the battlefield, what happened to the other people on the battlefield. And we'll talk about the nature of injuries as well as we discuss the film, because that's interesting, the way injuries are dealt with in this movie. It's very important to the overall themes within the film. And so they sort of live within this futuristic city. We don't really see much of the city that they live in terms of how futuristic it is. It's more like a background image. And so in terms of character-wise, Carmen's more of a math nerd. Rico's more of a jock. And so that's reflected in their career choices later on. So she becomes like this pilot, basically, because she's sort of really, really smart in that way. But he becomes part of the infantry and sort of puts his life on the line. And then Carl's there too. So Carl's like hanging around. So they're all just like ignorant kids at this point. They're just like doing the typical high school thing at this point in the movie. It's not great, probably deliberately, but it's sort of tough to get through the first 20-30 minutes of this movie. And so they're in like the science class and they're dissecting bugs and stuff, and Carmen like pukes all over the bug. And then wasn't there like the psychic scene?
Yeah,
Alan
with
Rico,
the car.
like
Yeah,
the psychic stuff. But Rico has no psychic ability. Like Carl's like trying to get him to like trying to pull out some sort of psychic ability in Rico, but he doesn't have any. Because Carl becomes like this military scientist. Eventually, like he starts experimenting on bugs and starts coming up with like strategies to do with science in order to take out the bugs. So
Carl's got like mental telepathy or telekinesis or something, some kind of psych ability.
Exactly, which is why he could sort of communicate with the brain bug
So
at the end.
I guess like the humans are kind of evolving, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way. Yeah. Well, the humans might be evolving, but their weaponry isn't. We'll talk about that later. We cut to an indoor football game, which looks really bad. I don't know what they would like. I was watching this football scene. I was like, "What is this?" Because the field was like really tiny, and it looked like I don't know what it looked like some sort of TV show.
It's just like a TV show, indoor NFL.
And there's all this like high school cliche jock stuff. Like throughout this, like the first half an hour is just brutal.
I think what stood out was that like a unisex sport, like Diz.
Everything
Diz was in the game as well.
I'm glad you said that, because everything in this when I say everything, I mean everything is unisex in this movie. Everything, and I suppose that's an important part of this fascist society that Verhoeven has created, because you're saying, okay, if we have ultimate, like the ultimate equality between the sexes, this is what it would look like. Because no one's really talking about family and kids and like traditional values. Like everyone's just go to war, including the women. Like no one's saying, wait, if all the women go to war, who's going to have the kids?
There was one of the chicks that was enlisting into the infantry with Rico. She said that she's here because she wants to have a family. She wants to be a mummy. So I guess she needs to serve, do her term, and then she'll get that ability to, I guess, be in a family, have a family.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. So
Mhm.
the to lawfully procreate, so which could be a thing in this type of society. So yeah, like no boundaries in terms of like gender separation as part of this militarized society that that Verhoeven has created. It's sort of an interesting idea from his perspective. Um, so this football game, like it's everything about it is like the most cliched football game. Like Rico gets the winning score, of course. Um, which sort of comes back around later on when he fights the bug, but and then remember the other guy, what's his name? Xander. Like even his name, like his name and his jawline and his hair. Like it's just like the most jock like archetype of a character. Like he just like struts around, like hits on Denise Richards all the time. And he has like a rivalry with Rico.
Yeah, Rico's it's a bit of a jealous, spoiled
Yeah,
brat
he gets
kid.
really angry when it comes to Denise Richards.
Like, it's like, you talking to my woman? Like, oh, I know your weakness now.
I know he freaks out like really quickly. And so we cut to Rico talking to his parents about joining the federal service, but his parents are like, "No, that's dumb." But Rico's like filled with enthusiasm to become a citizen and to contribute to society in some tangible way. But his parents are also rich, and they're
Yeah,
like,
they got a nice pad, massive.
yeah, they're like going on vacation to the rings of Saturn. That's how rich they are. um, I'll read my the next line of my notes. It's the school dance (brackets gay). So
It
I
looked
mean,
to me, it reminded me a lot of like my formal in the 90s.
oh really?
It was like a 90s kind of party,
Yeah, it was a 90s kind of party.
90s teenager party.
Yeah. So this is, I guess, the last lame scene of the first part of the film. Like we have like this like lame like rivalries and relationship drama, like all the stuff that doesn't matter in a sci-fi action movie. That I'm like, just get to the bloody shooting already. But anyway, turns out Dizzy, the curly haired chick that's sort of a rival to Denise Richards, she starts dancing with Rico. Which sort of causes a little bit of tension. Ooh, like, but I didn't care about that. And then Razak's there too. He's hanging out. Like he's always hanging out when the kids are having fun. Like after the battle, like later on in the movie. But Rico like looks up to him, and so Rico asks him some advice, and Razak was like, "You just need to make your own decisions." Like Razak doesn't like give him this
You
rah
calling
rah
him
speech about
Razak
joining the army.
or Ratchek?
I'm
I think
calling
his
him
name is
Razak because it's too complicated. What is it?
Ratchek.
It's spelled Raszczak. I'm saying Razak because I
I
don't
thought
know
it's just
what they're saying.
I thought it's Ratchek ECK. Rat
Bruh,
check.
I've got the IMDb page open. Like I wrote down exactly how it's spelled because it was such a weird name. I don't know why they gave him such a complicated name.
Look, his name is Ratchek.
I guess it is Ratchet. Ratchet's Roughnecks.
Because I remember Rico's talking to his dad. Yeah, it says Rakzak. Rakchak. I thought it says Ratchek.
Ratsack.
I think they just called it Ratchek because Rico was talking to his own dad, and he's like, "Oh, that name, that teacher, Ratchek."
Mm. But yeah, the dance is like super lame. Like it's easily the worst scene in the film. But deliberately so. Like it's not bad because Verhoeven's bad. It's bad because Verhoeven made it bad. And then to flip the script a bit, Carmen starts dancing with Xander. Like it's so, oh god, it's so weird. And then Rico swoops in and takes it back. It's like I don't care. And so, luckily, thankfully, we sort of cut to the recruitment portion of the film. So they go to the recruitment officer and sort of take up their positions finally. Rico's going to the infantry.
Oh, they do some test, some ranking test that kind of puts them into different categories.
Yeah, that's right. And also,
Like Carl
I should
gets
say,
like high score. Or...
yeah. And then after the dance, they actually show the military oath of office. Like everyone's standing around in lines quoting the military oath of office, and then we cut to the recruitment officer scene.
Way to go, Carl.
Next time we meet, I'll probably have to salute you. What about you, son?
Infantry, sir.
Good for you. Mobile infantry made me the man I am today.
Yeah, I love that type of subtle filmmaking. Like just show his legs and show Rico's face. That's all he needs.
It's like a taster, an early taster for what's to
Taste of
come.
what's to come. Actually, we could,
sample.
yeah. I won't mention that yet, but so yeah, Rico infantry, Carl military intelligence, and then Denise Richards, I guess flight school, whatever it's called, spaceship flying. I'll say pilot. What am I saying? It's like I can't speak English. Carmen's going to become a pilot.
Oh, she's in Fleet Command.
Fleet Command. There we go. That was the term for it. And so one of the costs of joining the military for citizenship is that Rico is cut off from his wealthy family, which probably wouldn't matter if he dies, which is likely. And so we cut to another propaganda broadcast from the Fed News Network. And this time with the kids. So we've got a bunch of kids and we've got some soldiers like showing them their huge guns.
They're letting him handle it and everything.
Yeah, this is one of the better like commercial breaks in the movie because it has some really interesting commercials. So yeah, the soldiers propagandizing the kids, but then next we have live executions on TV, which isn't that unusual.
It kind of shows that society's kind of been desensitized to death.
Yeah, but I was about to say, like, live executions, things like that, it's not as unusual as you may think. Like in modern day society, it's pretty gross, but
like public execution
years, like for thousands of years we've had like live killings of people, whether it's like literal public executions in the town square or like people getting tortured and murdered or executed or whatever by the authorities in the Middle Ages, for example, and amongst different societies around the world throughout history. Like that, it's not really that unusual, but in modern society now, that's really gross and not consistent with our values. And so to see it broadcast live on TV is part of the building the character of the society that this movie is set in. And then there's also a commercial for psychic talent, like they're trying to recruit people who have psychic abilities to the military, which is interesting. And then we cut to basic training, the barracks. Zim's character shows up. Sergeant Zim. This is a really funny scene. Because obviously you would have like the cliched sergeant like yelling at the recruits, but this time, Zim challenges them to a fight. Like he says, "Anyone want to come fight me?" And then the guy comes and he literally like snaps his arm, so he has like a compound fracture of his forearm.
Yeah,
And
that
so
was pretty
it's
brutal.
pretty brutal. And so there's this running joke in the movie during basic training where Zim would yell "medic" whenever someone would get badly hurt. Like even when the guy gets his head blown off, Rico yells
Yeah.
"medic." Yeah, that's like a running joke, bit of humor from Verhoeven during these scenes, but like it's so ludicrous that all you can do is laugh. And so after Zim breaks the guy's arm, Dizzy shows up. So she shows up like really serious, like she's like, "Oh, I deliberately transferred." No, she's like, "I want to join your crew, whatever." And then he's like, "Oh, you deliberately chose my crew. So what are you gonna do about it?" And then like she just like takes off a jacket and starts fighting him. So she does pretty well. Like she gets some hits in, but then she gets choked out by his knee. Like he puts his knee on her neck, and later on you see like this huge red mark on her neck
Yeah, bruising.
because she gets like choked out until she like passes out. It's pretty funny. And then it sort of cut to the mess hall. So all the recruits are like wild animals, basically. Like they're just acting wild like the whole time. And then we meet Ace.
Ace tries to cut
Ace
the line.
barges in the line. And the Rico tells him to piss off. And that sort of impresses Ace. So it's like, oh, we're going to get along just fine. And then we learn that there's a competition within that squad of infantry members to become squad leader. And so everyone's, especially Rico, is sort of really focused on becoming squad leader. There's a lot of rivalries within that. Let me get this really funny scene.
Sir, I don't understand. Who needs a knife in a nuke fight anyway?
Put your hand on that wall! The enemy cannot push a button if you disable his hand.
It's
Medic.
another really straightforward scene, but very effective.
This is all like all these kind of scenes is candy, like for a teenager. Like, eat this up.
Yeah, when I watched it again, I didn't remember that scene. So it's kind of surprising to see it on this, watching it recently for this stream. But yeah, that was pretty funny. But yeah, at the end of that, he yells "medic" again. Actually, we can talk about that now because one point I wanted to bring up was the healing capabilities of the military at the time. So basically, any sort of they can heal any sort of injury except dismemberment. It seems like
It looks like it. It reminded me of that tube that Luke was in Star Wars. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh yeah.
And I remember even in Dragon Ball Z, Goku was in a tube like that as well.
Yeah. Wait, so Luke was basically in a very almost the exact same thing that Rico was in when he got injured, right? Like the big vat of liquid
Luke was
that's healing.
like a smaller test tube where he was like standing in it basically, and Rico was in like it was like a huge round bathtub of sorts,
Mm.
like a
But
little
in
pool.
principle, it's the same thing, like liquid,
Yeah,
a liquid tank basically that heals you.
like for Rico, you could see there was some kind of um, mechanism that was like knitting his body back together, like
Yeah.
closing the wounds, and yeah, so it's some kind of interesting, maybe nanotechnology of sorts, I guess.
Yeah. It's I thought that bit was really well done. That special effects for the uh healing mechanism. But yeah, it's probably some sort of AI as well. Like no one really mentions AI in the movie, I don't think. But if it was remade today, people will be talking about AI quite a bit in terms of AI running certain functions within society, especially the military. So, but that's something we would impress upon the movie from our perspective, in 2023, especially if you're talking about the future. In the future, AI would play a huge role in that type of thing. All right. Yeah, so Ace gets a knife in his hand. And then we cut back to the locker room, and Rico's trying to have a video call with Denise Richards, but everyone in the locker room's just acting wild again. It's like they're just a bunch of animals. And then we cut to Carmen's life. I thought it was interesting Verhoeven's choice of music when it cuts to Carmen and what she's doing in the Fleet Squadron. Like the music is very fanciful and like a Disney movie. It's full of fantasy and wonder. It sort of reflects Carmen's attitude.
She probably had the best training. Like it was it looked like such an easy kind of lifestyle
Mm.
compared to what Rico was going through. And we didn't get to see what Carl had to do. Like his stuff was like all secret hush hush.
Yeah, Carl's would have been the most interesting because that's like CIA stuff. Carl's basically recruited into the CIA, like the equivalent of the CIA. So he would have been doing like Black Ops research, like undercover research, like all the dark stuff that no one knows about. It should have been interesting. We sort of get a glimpse of it throughout the movie in terms of the experiments that they're trying to run on the bugs and as different strategies to take out the bugs. So it's sort of interesting also how they dressed up Carl later on in the movie when he shows up again. He's dressed
Yeah,
like a
it's got
Nazi officer.
yeah. Some of the uniforms is very. It looks very much like Nazi uniforms.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really interesting choice. Like there's a lot of really subtle choices in this movie. It's something that I'll keep coming back to. And so we get an exterior shot of the space station, which looks really cool. I thought some of the exterior shots were really nice. I thought overall the special effects were pretty good for the time. I don't think there's anything egregious. It's just the way it is filmed is so clean and bright. It just looked really weird. Like especially if you compare this to something like Aliens, sort of dark and gritty and reflects like the reality of what it would be like to fight xenomorphs on a space station. But this movie is like super bright, even at night. Like it's bright, like there's bright lights, and it's sort of really unusual when you compare it to other sci-fi movies. But that obviously, again, deliberate by Verhoeven. And so Xander's there. Xander like positioned himself as a flight instructor for Denise Richards because he heard she was like coming down. So he like gets into her life deliberately. Like he's so sleazy. Like he's just hitting on her like from the first second. And so it's time to test her skills flying a giant ship. And so she like scrapes the edge and pulls out and like flips the switch just as the fuel pumps are about to stretch too much. So she's like showing off.
She's a bit of a hot shot.
Yeah, she's a bit of a hot shot. And so they put the warp drive to Jupiter, which is pretty cool. And they've cut to Rico's training scenario. So it's basically real life capture the flag, like a FPS type of capture the flag, except real life.
I felt the whole movie felt like a video game. That's
Yeah,
one of the reasons why I liked it as well. I was waiting for like a Starship Troopers game to come out, but I think it only came out on PC. But
yeah,
that was like
I saw
a
some
long
streams
time
of that.
later.
Yeah, it's sort of like a Starship Troopers / Destiny, sort of a Destiny style. Where the enemies are bullet sponges. And so they do the real life capture the flag, and Rico and Dizzy come up with this maneuver in order to win. So Rico does his backflip maneuver, and he like shoots the enemy, and then manages to capture the flag. And then we cut to.
Oh, he gets squad leader as well for that.
Oh yeah, squad leader. Yeah, he wins squad leader because of that. Because we sort of see Ironside, of Ratchek. he saw what Rico was doing, and it's like, oh yeah, he's probably the best. But then Rico's about to get some bad news because back at the barracks, he gets a video call from Denise Richards, and she wants to break up with him. Like, what makes it worse is that everyone's standing around watching this video call. Even Ace is right there as she's breaking up with him. But Ace doesn't clown him. Ace was actually like pretty understanding. He was like, "Oh yeah, they rip your heart out, don't they?" You know. So it's actually he actually had Rico's back in that scenario. But basically, Carmen wants to break up with Rico because she wants to focus on her career, and so that would mean that it'd be like the most long distance relationship you can ever imagine. Like you're basically going from Earth to Jupiter,
Millions of
like
light
that's
years away.
millions of light years type of long distance relationship.
So what's the minimum time that you need to be in the Federation to earn citizenship? Yeah, what was the minimum time?
Wasn't it 2 years?
Was it I can't remember.
It was something like that.
Thought it would be like 2 or 3 years or something.
Yeah, I know in South Korea it's 2 years mandatory military service when you're 20 or something. So it's pretty common. And so we cut to more battle practice. This is an interesting scene because they actually have a different battle practice scenario. But this one, everything goes to hell because one of Rico's men, his helmet stops working and the comms stop working or something. And so Rico tells him to take his helmet off to check it. But then unfortunately something goes wrong, and then one of the other female soldiers, she like falls over and then shoots the guy's head off accidentally. And then Rico yells, "Medic!" And so basically Rico broke the rules because you're not supposed to tell your squad mates to take their helmet off in the middle of a firefight, or in this case, in the middle of a live practice, a live practice scenario. And so Rico broke like a really bad rule. And so as punishment, he doesn't get kicked out. Like the woman who shot the guy's head off, she gets kicked out, but Rico doesn't get kicked out. He gets 10 lashes.
Prisoner! Halt! Lay down on this, son. It helps. I know.
Yeah, so again, consistent with this fascist, I guess, political ideology that runs this society, we have lashes, which is really archaic. So again, consistent with what I was saying before about reintroducing archaic forms of punishment, like the live broadcast of an execution. We have the live broadcast, at least within military circles, of lashes. I mean, you can't get more old school than lashes, especially within like a futuristic society. So sort of an interesting choice for Verhoeven to have the military punishment be lashes, not like a demotion or some other sort of formal legal
Oh, he
punishment that
does.
we would
He
be
did.
used to.
He did get demoted though. He did lose squad command.
But I mean,
I
not
think
just promotion,
it's-
demotion. Like
yeah.
usually it's just demotion or just something other than whipping someone on the back 10 times. So, yeah, interesting choice from Verhoeven to further build the characterization of this society. So while Rico's getting whipped, Carmen's in space getting fresh with Xander in the romantic ship they're in. And she's moving up in the world. She's like getting promotions. Like her career's taken off basically. Until they hit a gravity field. So it's pretty cool scene where the cup, the drink in the cup was like moving or like at a weird angle because they were encountering this gravity field. And so the gravity field turns out to be an asteroid an asteroid. And so they have to do an emergency evasion in order to avoid the asteroid. But meanwhile, Rico, after he gets lashed, he decides to quit the infantry. And so he phones his parents. He's like, listen, can I come home? And his parents are like, sure, come back home. You know, you don't need to join the military or whatever. And then at the end of the call, his parents look up into the sky and it's like, starts to get dark really quickly. And it's like, oh, what was that? And then the call cuts out. And then Rico, and then everyone's like running around yelling like, oh, we're at war. And Rico's like, what the hell's going on? And turns out Earth has been attacked by the bugs, by like meteors and stuff, asteroids. And so Buenos Aires has been completely wiped off the map. And that's where everyone's family is. Right? Like that's where Rico's family is. So like I think Denise Richards' family was there as well. Which is sort of interesting. Everyone's living in Buenos Aires. It's sort of this random South American country. Like not America. I don't know. I thought that was really weird.
So America just taking up the southern countries, taking over.
And
but
so
I guess that's what the Federation is. It's probably North and South America's combined now or something.
most likely, yeah. But and now it's time for war. Everyone's outraged. Let's get the bugs. Time to go to war. It's time to destroy these freaks. And so Rico, he wants back in. And so he challenges the guy from Breaking Bad. And Zim is like, let me back in. And then they let him back in. But the one interesting thing about this movie that they didn't include was the idea of a false flag in order to precipitate conflict against the bugs, like fabricating an attack on Earth in order to facilitate war with the bugs. Like that didn't really happen, which I thought was interesting. It seemed like the reasons for war were actually legitimate. So Verhoeven could easily have done like some sort of false flag attack, coordinated by the government and the federal institutions in order to create an excuse to go to war. But in this case, it seemed like the reason for war was actually legitimate, rather than a false flag. So, but at the same time, you still have all the propaganda. Like if you have a false flag, it's consistent with having the propaganda to go with it. All right. And so we go to the equivalent of the United Nations today, the Federal Council in Geneva, and they're voting to go to war against Clandathu. I mean, I say there's no false flag, but it's not made explicit that there was a false flag. So there's the possibility that it could have been a false flag. That's what I'm saying. And then Carl's on video. He's talking about the experiments they're doing on bugs, like mind control sort of stuff. And then we get like more propaganda, this time with kids.
Everyone's doing their part. Are you? The war effort needs your effort. At work, at home, in your community.
Yeah, they're literally killing cockroaches.
Man, so maniacal. Is that the teacher's laugh or a parent's laugh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like the cheering on the destruction of like just innocent insects on Earth. Like they're not bugs from outer space, But that's sort of the patriotic zeal that the propaganda needs to be fueled from a young age. And so we get another like live news broadcast. Like sometimes you have a guy like the news presenter. So he's walking around the barracks, and Rico and his other guys and the girls, they're really confident that they're ready to go out and blast some bugs. And then Xander shows up, and Rico flips out again. Like he can't control his emotions when Xander shows up. But Xander's like a higher rank, and so Rico can't just go up and fight him. And so Xander's like, okay, fine. Like, I'll ignore my rank. And he makes the announcement, listen, I'm no longer like whatever rank I am. So we can like have a fight.
And Rico just steps in and gets a cheap shot in. Gets a punch in his face first.
Exactly. And so they have a fight. Like, it's not much of a fight because after they throw a few punches, everyone's just holding them back. But there's like a definite beef between infantry and fleet, the fleet squad.
Yeah, fleet does the flying and the infantry do the dying.
Exactly. Yeah, but you can see like just like the fleet squad, they're like got really nice suits on. They look like a higher rank compared to the infantry. Infantry just like
and
grunts.
They look clean. They look like they smell nice. Infantry, they look dirty.
Infantry look like the Space Marines from Aliens, basically. Like they're just bunch of roughnecks with guns.
I like that baggy cap that they get though, the infantry.
Yeah.
with their uniform.
Yeah, they're
That's-
good
They
uniforms.
got a nice uniform there. I thought
Yeah.
the uniforms in this movie were nice. Like the Federation.
Yeah.
No, it looks really cool. Bit
Yeah.
Nazi-ish, but
Yeah, the Nazi
well,
uniforms.
overall, it still looks pretty.
No, everyone says the Nazi uniforms are the best. They were designed by Hugo Boss. So,
Oh, really?
yeah. A lot of these
No, I
German
didn't.
brands were used by Hitler. Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, Hugo Boss.
So they get tattoos after this. They get tattoos
and they get
lit.
tattoos. Yeah,
They get tattoos and get lit.
they'll get matching tattoos, and Ace spills the whiskey on Rico's arm. Yeah, it looks like it was really painful as well. But yeah, it's sort of this sort of this cliched, propagandized patriotism for war from the young recruits, but although it's pretty effective. And so after that, we get the dropship scene. So everyone likes a dropship scene in a science fiction film. So everyone remembers the aliens dropship scene, very memorable. One-way ticket to hell or something. Hicks or Hudson.
Yeah, it's Hudson.
Always get them Hudson. I get them mixed up.
One-way ticket to hell.
Hell,
Going down.
down. And Ripley asks Gorman, how many drops have you been on? Like 2, really? But the other one was practice or something.
And he's like, how many combat drops?
How
I
many
know it's
combat
Vasquez
drops?
is like, how many
Yeah.
combat drops? 2, including this one.
Yeah, including this one. Yeah, everyone likes a good dropship scene.
Watching this movie again, Stormtroopers, it just reminds me so much of Halo. How Halo just pretty much took everything from this movie, like the weapons, the ships, some of the uniforms, and yeah, they copied a lot of inspiration from it.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. What am I up to? Jeez. All right, the dropship. And so they land on the planet, and there's little bugs and there's big bugs. And then we see a couple of bugs, right? Like they're walking around. I mean, they're not walking. What would they be walking around? They're like running around with their weapons. We don't see any bugs, and then we see one bug, and they blast it, and then they see 2 bugs, and then they see a bunch of bugs, and they're like, "Oh no, there's too many. Like we got to fall back and retreat."
And it's like, what do we do? And then I think Ace kind of freezes up, and
yeah,
and then Rico's like, kill them all.
yeah.
And then they just start unloading on him.
Yeah. But there's way too many. Because their weapons are really ineffective. Like their weapons are horrible.
The weapons, it's pretty much like 10 people shooting at one to bring it down. Like they all got to put a clip into it.
And there's no like knockback or like any way to like subdue their movement. I mean, the bugs' movement as you're shooting, because the bugs can still like walk through as you shoot them and impale you with like their pincers, whatever.
What was that mini nuke rocket launchers? That was sick.
Yeah, the nukes
Like,
are
they
cool.
should have filled those rockets, and then it's like a mini nuclear explosion. That's sick.
They could have had like a grenade launcher, like in Aliens. Like you have the grenade launcher at the bottom, and then the shotgun at the top, or something. Like something, not just like.
Even I feel like the technology was. I feel like it's purposefully crap. So I feel like they could have lasers and heavy weaponry and stuff like that. Even vehicles, tanks, or something. But I feel like it's purposefully they're using these weapons so not to wipe out the bugs easily.
Exactly. I was thinking exactly the same thing. It's like the soldiers are expendable in a way. So, you know, as long as we're always going to have thousands of kids signing up, why do we need to ensure their safety? You know, because there's going to be so many bodies we could just throw at the bugs. So there's another news reporter at the battle, and he gets chopped in half. And the really cool scene where Rico is like almost running away, but then he turns around and shoots some bugs, and then as he's shooting the bug dead, the bug impales his leg
No, I
with a
thought that was
giant
cool.
pincer.
He had like some kind of shotgun, and that was
Yeah, he had
pretty
some sort of
effective
shotgun. Yeah,
at close range. Like
yeah.
that was blowing parts off him. But yeah, I felt like that bug lunging at him and impaling his leg, that probably could have gone through his bone, and
Oh yeah,
he would have had like a
yeah. I was
spaghetti
thinking
leg
of
or
that
something.
too. That would have split his femur in two, probably.
Yeah,
Like, that would have been a horrible injury.
and then he just passes out.
Yeah, yeah. They got the fade to black for Rico, and then we cut to a news report: 100,000 dead in 1 hour. And then when they get back to the barracks, on the screen it says over 300,000 dead. So to your point, you know, the value of human life is really low for the Federation. So it doesn't really matter that 300,000 people died. Like, no one's going to question that. And then Carmen's there. She looks up at the screen. She types in Rico's name, and Rico's KIA. She thinks Rico's dead. But then we cut to Ratzak again. Ratzak. And it's a new squad called Ratzak's Roughnecks. I wish they gave him a different name.
Ratchak's Roughnecks.
Yeah, Ratchak's Roughnecks. So it's like a new squad. And so now, finally, like when they get to the next planet, they're like bombing the bugs from the air, which they should have done in the first place. But then, like, the new squad, the Roughnecks, they're like walking through, and they like kill a bug, but then the black guy comes up and starts blasting it from point blank range, and gets like the blood guts all over him.
You know what? I've got a Rico pop vinyl. I forgot to get it for today's
really?
stream. Yeah, he's got some orange bug guts on his helmet.
Oh yeah, that's like my my thumbnail. So Rico nukes a bug lair. So the bug lairs are in like caves. So they chuck a nuke down there, and it destroys the bug lair. But then out of the ground comes this super tank giant bug that I call the super bug. Like, it's just gigantic. So that Rico needs to use his football skills to take it down. Yeah, really cool scene. Really,
The
well
CGI
done.
in this was really good. Like,
Yeah, it's
excellent
really
for the
good
time,
special.
but even now it
Yeah.
still shows up nice.
But did you notice the music in that scene, in that clip?
No, I
It's
don't
the
think so.
same
You wanna
music.
replay it?
Oh, replay.
Yeah.
Listen to the music. I don't know. The music just reminded me of Aliens when
Oh, really?
they're about to
Yeah.
nuke the
I thought it was Star
the
Wars.
planet.
I get Star Wars
Uh,
vibes out of it.
okay. No, I thought it
It
sounded
could
exactly
be.
like the music from
Oh, yeah.
Aliens when they're like flying away. Bishop and
Oh, yeah.
Newt and
Yeah.
Ripley are
I
flying
remember
away,
that.
and
Yeah.
they're about to nuke it. And they go dun, 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 dun. It's sort of
Oh, yeah.
pretty much the
Oh, yeah. I
same.
get some of that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Verhoeven, used some of those movies as inspiration. Like he should. Like that's what they're for. So we get a really cool scene with Rico being the hero of the day, taking out the gigantic bug. And so as a result, he's promoted to corporal. So Rico gets a lot of promotions in this movie. And so since he becomes corporal, he promotes Dizzy to squad leader because Ace doesn't want that type of responsibility. Then later that night, there's a party. Like Ratzak, like pulls out the beer. He's like, "I expect you to work hard or whatever, but you can like party hard or something." He says something along those lines. And so he provides like
He said
beer.
something like, "I expect the best, so I give the best."
Expect the best. So I
And then
provide
he
the
pulls
best,
out these humongous briefcases of toy, not toy, like a big chest of.
Yeah, like it's almost like toys. I was like, what kind of party is this? Like they've got football and like a fiddle. It's like the weirdest. Like here's the entertainment. It's like a footballs and a fiddle, and Ace like picks up the fiddle and it's like fiddling, like running. Everyone's like dancing around like it's some sort of medieval fantasy movie. It's like a super weird like party scene.
Yeah, it's kind of
sort came
unusual
out of
to,
nowhere.
like, they're basically in the middle of a mission and they're just having a party.
But they're like dancing. Like this could be like Lord of the Rings, where the hobbits are like dancing
Oh,
around.
yeah,
in
yeah, they're doing
Hobbiton.
like that line dancing kind of dance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they're dancing around. Like it's really weird. I don't know. Like I don't know if Verhoeven did it for laughs or whatever. But
Maybe it's
I don't
because
know.
of the
I thought it was pretty
violin.
funny. Yeah, it's like it's right. There's a fiddle like dancing around like hobbits. It's like really weird. Like especially after the battle, like after the death and destruction they've seen, like they're just dancing around like in some sort of medieval village in an RPG. But yeah, I just thought it was funny. And so next we get a really important part of the movie where they have to go to Planet P and they're responding to a distress signal. I thought this part of the movie is really, really good. It was one of the best parts of the movie. And so Rico's promoted again. He's acting sergeant. And the outpost they're going to is being overrun. Everyone's dead. Like there's like bodies ripped to shreds everywhere. And then they find a guy whose brains have been sucked out. So now there's another layer of the bugs. Like what are they doing sucking the brains out of people?
Looks like a bug was in his brain, sir. I was thinking initially I thought the brain was in his brain. I mean the bug was in his brain and it like burst out.
Yeah.
But it turned out I was
like
wrong.
a chest burster.
Like
but
that was
brain
my
burster.
initial when I watched it back in the day.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then there's one survivor, the general, is hiding in a locker. So Ratzak almost blows his head off because the general's like freaking out, like he's just ranting and raving. But he's talking about how the bugs want the soldiers to like act against their will, like they're basically mind controlling the soldiers, and the distress signal was a trap laid by the bugs basically. to lure some of the soldiers to the planet so they can get ambushed. So it's a trap. And so we get a bug ambush. Yeah, everyone likes a decapitation every now and then. So that
And
was a really awesome scene.
Ratchet has that line of "Come on, apes, you want to live forever."
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I wanted to mention that the line, "Do you want to live forever?" Because Rico starts saying it.
Yeah.
Like Rico starts saying the same things Ratchet says. Like he starts becoming a version of Ratchet after Ratchet dies. Spoiler alert. So it's such an ambush that there's like literally thousands of bugs. There's no way they could hope to survive. So Xander, he drops in with a rescue ship. But then the ground like opens up because there's another tank, like super bug underground, like coming up. And then Ratchet, he gets like caught up in like this sand pit. It's like this sand trap in the ground. And so he gets captured by the bug and gets his legs like ripped off. And before that, as they're like scouting Planet P, Ratchet shoots one of the soldiers who's getting like ripped apart by a bug, and then he tells Rico, I think he tells the whole squad like, you know that you have to do the same for me, like or something like that. Like you would do the same for me if I was in that situation or whatever. And then that situation comes up when Ratchet gets his legs chopped off. He turns to Rico and he says, "What?"
Rico, you know what to do.
Yeah, probably,
that's my favorite.
Our favorite line from the movie. Yeah. So I knew you were gonna be ready with that. So
no, I still say
it. Rico, you know what to do. And so Rico like shoots him. He shoots him in the chest, and so he doesn't shoot his head off like I thought he was going to do. But
in the heart, I guess.
No, I think they shoot him in the heart so they can have a proper funeral. You know, it'd be a bit of a mess if he shoots him in the head.
What, did they take his body though?
Funeral.
Like, did they take
Good
his
question.
body?
That's a good question, actually. Actually, no, they didn't. That's right. I was thinking this as I was watching it. They didn't. Because they took Dizzy's body, but not his.
Because she dies on the ship.
So speaking of Dizzy, it seems like Dizzy and Rico are going to escape, but then they have a slow motion bit where Dizzy's like running, and then behind her,
she took out the tanker bug, the big one that came out of the ground.
Oh yeah,
she,
that's right.
Threw a nade in his mouth.
Yeah, she chucks a grenade
like celebrating, and then she gets impaled from behind.
Yeah, she gets like sliced up really badly. But then they managed to get her into the ship, the rescue ship, but like she's shredded. She's about to die.
Yeah, she's bleeding out.
And then on the ship, so Denise Richards is on the ship as well. Her and Xander's on the ship. And so Rico tells him, we got to destroy the planet. We got to nuke it from orbit, just like in Aliens. But then the command says, no, we're not going to do that. Like there's other plans. And so he goes back to Dizzy, and Dizzy's like dying. Basically, she basically dies in his arms. And then we get a military funeral for Dizzy back at base. And then Carl shows up in his Nazi uniform. But it turns out Carl knew like there was a brain bug on the planet, and that they needed the intel on the brain bug before they could do anything. And so he basically sacrificed those soldiers to get that intel on the brain bug. And so Rico and Carmen are unhappy about that because they're like, "How could you do this to us?" You know. But then Carl's like, "We do what we got to do, you know, in times of war or some such." And then,
And if you don't like it, too bad.
and so they have to go back down to Planet P and capture the brain bug, not just kill it. You need to capture it and bring it back. But now it's Lieutenant Rico, so he keeps getting promoted. He's lieutenant now.
And it's Rico's Roughnecks.
And Rico's roughly, yeah, the black guy really likes Rico. He's a huge supporter of Rico. It's like Rico's Roughnecks, which sounds better than Ratchet's Roughnecks.
I like Ratchet's Roughnecks better. Ratchet.
So the Carmen's orbiting in space, and her ship gets hit really badly. Basically, gets shot into, like it splits into. And then the ship captain, she dies because the door like falls on her.
Yeah.
It's just like the most terrible way to go. Like, of all the ways you can die, you get a door. You die because of a door. And so Carmen has to crash land on Planet P.
That was cool. Those escape pods. Thought that was
Hmm.
interesting. How there's like basically all the other escape pods are blowing up in the hangar, and it's just
Yeah.
crazy. Like they got seconds to get out.
Hmm.
Really intense. I like a
Now
lot
the
of
second half of this movie.
a lot of those the sci-fi scenes and space with the big fleet ships. They're well done. Really cool.
Now the second half of this movie is really, really good. Complete contrast, you know, deliberately so, to the first half of the movie. And so Carmen and Xander crash on the planet, and they sort of end up like they crash. I don't know if they crash in a cave, but they end up in a cave with
Yeah,
a
they
bunch
should
of
be dead.
bugs.
Like their little pod just bounced off mountains and smashed right into a mountain,
Yeah.
which happened to be hollowed out. Crazy.
Yeah, a hollowed out
They just-
cave with a bunch
And
of
they
bugs.
they just jump out, like get the guns out. They're fine.
And so Rico learns that Carmen has crash landed on the planet, and so he's like, doesn't she radio him or something?
Yeah, she's radioing in to I think
Yeah.
whoever's on the ground. Like, we're crash landing,
Yeah.
and this is our coordinates. And yeah, and I think it's Rico that picks him up on his radio or something.
And then initially Rico doesn't want to go after her because he's like, oh, she's already dead. But then as they're making their way through the cave system, Rico decides to try to rescue her because he gets a feeling that she's still alive. And so he can't do it as a military exercise, but he can do it just himself voluntarily. And so he gets 2 other volunteers to go and rescue Carmen and Xander. And so this is where we're introduced to the brain bug. And I thought the brain bug was really, really, really well done in terms of the special effects. Like, it looks completely different to the other bugs, and like it's so well
Yeah,
done. Like it's
he
so
looks like a
disgusting.
brain bug. Looks like a big brain.
Like it's really disgusting, but really impressive at the same time.
Yeah, it's got messed up eyeballs.
Yeah,
The little
and like the
pincer
mouth
that
thing
comes out
is
of its
weird.
mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, let's have a look at it.
I'm gonna kill you and your whole fucking race.
Yeah, Xander has some balls at the end. I got to give him credit for that. But that special effects at the end is really awesome. Like the way his head, like almost like squished because it was like being drained of liquid.
It's sunken in, and that was cool. The whole concept of the brain bug, and he sucks out your brain and stuff to learn. That's cool.
No, it's really well done. Yeah, some really good ideas in this movie, which again makes you wonder why there wasn't more, movies of this level, like
I feel like it
Starship
needs a
Troopers.
remake now. Maybe they could remake Starship Troopers, but I guess movies
Yeah.
today is just the remakes is just rubbish.
Because how can you capture the same sense of satire that Verhoeven has? Like, do you make it a satire or do you make it a straight military movie like Aliens?
Yeah.
That's the decision you have to make. So, yeah. So as we saw, the brain bug shows up, sucks out Xander's brain, but then Carmen gets, I should have said, Carmen gets stabbed in the back through her chest, and then she gets pulled up to get her brain sucked out. But then as the appendage comes down, she comes up and like chops it off, which is pretty cool. So she's got some balls. And then just at that moment, Rico shows up with a nuke. It's like he like basically says, "You know what this is?" It goes boom. And so the brain bug like escapes basically as the other bugs like crowd in around them. And so they get attacked by the bugs. And there's like, so one of the guys who came with him was a black guy. And so he gets badly injured, and so he stays behind with the nuke. So basically like Gorman and Vasquez with the grenade, like they stay back.
And it's like what Hudson was saying as well. Oh, you want some? Oh, you want some too?
Yeah.
Like, he's just laying there just shooting everybody, shooting aliens, letting the others escape.
You always were an asshole, Gorman. Yeah, and so the nuke goes off. They sort of blast the bugs in the cave, and then as they're coming out the cave, there's a huge celebration because they've captured the brain bug. And guess who captured the brain bug? It's Zim.
Zim got the bug, man.
Yeah, but yeah, it's sort of like he was talking with like the guy from Breaking Bad earlier in the movie, and Zim was like, "I want to fight," and then the guy from Breaking Bad was like, "No, you can't fight unless you want to become a private." And then at the end of the movie, after he captures the bug, it's like Private Zim captured the brain bug, and so that's like a little piece of plot consistency
it's like
that's revealed at the end.
It's like everyone outranks him now.
Yeah, everyone outranks him. Yeah. Like he was breaking bones before.
Carry on,
private. And now everyone outranks him. Yeah. Yeah. And so the film ends with another propaganda report emphasizing the fact the service guarantees citizenship. So, and also like a preview of the experiments they're doing on the brain bug, like pretty intrusive experiments, shall we say. But the military intelligence will be doing on the brain bug. So, and then the movie ends on that note. So on a propaganda note, just the way it started. So, but like we were saying before, it sort of ends at the end of that particular moment within the life of Rico and his squad. And so we get little glimpses of his squad at the end of the movie, you know, Rico's roughnecks, blah, blah, blah. You get the impression that everything's going to sort of progress the way it is now into the future in terms of maintaining like this military power over the bugs. But they sort of scored this gigantic victory by capturing the brain bug, and so they can learn more about the bugs and do more to destroy them in the future.
And they got all this new technology coming up, advancement in weaponry and things like that. So make it enticing for new recruits to play with new toys and stuff.
Exactly. So that was Starship Troopers. very entertaining after the first 30 minutes. If you can get past the first 30 minutes, it's extremely insightful and entertaining and interesting. Some interesting ideas and imagery. Interesting. I mean, like you have to view it not as just as a movie, but you have to view it as a satire. And Verhoeven's intentions, because I don't know if a lot of people actually would view a movie to that level. Like there's levels of watching movies, right? So if you're watching a satire, are you watching it as a satire, as the filmmaker intended, or are you just watching it as a sci-fi action movie, which is what we did as kids, right? Because what I don't know, we probably didn't even know what satire even meant back then. I suppose we got the impression that RoboCop was a satire in a way, but there's no way for us to really comprehend what that actually means, back then. So it's interesting to go back and look at it as an adult. So what's your final thoughts on the film?
I really enjoyed watching it again. If you're into sci-fi, Star Wars, or even Halo video games and stuff with this kind of genre, I feel like you'll just really enjoy this movie. I remember when I watched it first, I was in high school. I went to 15, 16, and after school, went to the city, Melbourne City, and went to the Greater Union Cinema.
Greater Union Cinema.
It was cheap.
They're not around anymore, by the way.
They're not around anymore. And yeah, that was like other high school kids will be going at that time as well, other schools. And it came out. I was all pumped up. I wanted to play some Time Cop or some shooting game. I needed to some Point Blank or something.
Oh, Point Blank. I put so much money into Point Blank.
I needed to shoot a gun after watching that movie. It's really
Point Blank was so much fun.
It's good fun.
But yeah.
I think you need a CRT TV to play that on now.
Or just the original arcade machine for 10 grand. I wouldn't mind buying one of those. But anyway, that was Starship Troopers. Definitely highly recommended as a time capsule for late 90s sci-fi action. Before you get into the classics of the late 90s, like Pulp Fiction, Heat, and Shawshank, you can watch something like Starship Troopers as well. It's a nice satire popcorn flick at the same time. Here's to Starship Troopers. How do I do this? Here's to Starship Troopers. May ye watch it in the future. And thank you for watching. Join us next time for a film that I can't recall at this stage.
I think it's Running Man.
I think I might be Running Man. It is Running Man. Running Man starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And where was she from?
She's Predator 2.
Predator 2.
I can't remember what her name is.
I think she was in another. I don't know. She was in something else. We'll talk about it next week. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you later.
Latest.